The auction nobody wanted, nobody cheered when they dragged the little alien girl onto the stage. Not a single hand clapped. In fact, most of the crowd looked away, some even laughed, shaking their heads at the sorry sight. Her skin was pale blue, and her hair hung like dirty silk. She wore a torn cloth that barely covered her thin body. Most of all, everyone saw her missing leg, a crude bandage wrapped where her right limb should have been. "She's useless," a fat trader shouted from the back, his voice echoing in the open market. "Who wants a broken alien?" The auctioneer, an old man with tired eyes, banged his stick on the wooden floor. "Quiet. All of you. Quiet," he said, trying to sound important. But his voice only made the crowd snicker more. The girl stood very still, staring down at her bare foot, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. She hugged her arms tightly around her body. Her one remaining leg trembled, but she didn't cry. Not a single tear. Instead, she just waited, as if she'd done this 100 times before. The auctioneer cleared his throat and tried again. "1 unit of strong alien blood. Young, smart, can work. Who will start the bid?" The silence stretched long and cold. Then another cruel voice spoke up. "I wouldn't take her if you paid me. 1 leg can't even clean floors properly." People started laughing, even louder now. Some threw bits of old food at the stage. The girl flinched as a rotten apple hit her shoulder. But still, she did not cry. Her eyes, deep silver, stared at nothing. The auctioneer looked desperate. "Half price." Then, "Come now, someone must need help. Even half a worker is better than none." But the crowd had already turned away. No one wanted her. She was the last on the list, the least valuable, and now it looked like she'd leave with nobody in that moment. A man in a plain brown coat stepped closer to the front of the stage. He was human, which made him different right away. Most humans at the alien market came to laugh or watch, but not to buy. This man kept his hood low, face in shadow, and his hands tucked in his pockets. No one noticed him before, but now he stood out. The laughter died down, and people turned to stare. The auctioneer spotted him too. "You there, sir? Would you like to make an offer?" The man didn't speak for a long moment. He only looked at the girl. She lifted her head, slowly, meeting his gaze. Something in his eyes made her freeze. There was no cruelty there. No pity, either. Just calm, like a deep, still pond. One of the traders sneered, "Come on, human, don't be a fool. She's a waste of coin." The man didn't answer. Instead, he took out a small bag and poured silver coins into his hand. The coins flashed in the sunlight. Even the auctioneer's eyes went wide. That was more money than most would pay for a strong slave, never mind, a broken one. "For her," the man said softly. His voice was low, but everyone heard. A shocked hush fell. The auctioneer blinked, mouth open. "Are you sure?" For her, no refund, sir." "For her," the man repeated. Now, the auctioneer nodded fast. He shoved the coins in his pocket, grabbed the girl by her thin arm, and pushed her off the stage, straight toward the human. She stumbled, nearly falling, but he caught her gently, steadying her. The traders muttered among themselves. Some even followed, watching as the human and the alien girl walked away from the stage. The girl's heart thudded in her chest. She didn't dare look up. Every time someone bought her before, it meant pain, or work, or worse. Why would this time be different? They reached the edge of the market, where the crowd thinned and the noises grew faint. The human knelt down to her level. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl shook her head. She had no name now. Her old one was gone, lost with her family, her home, and her leg. He didn't push. "You can tell me later. For now, let's go home." Home. The word made her want to cry for. The first time in a long while, but she held it in. She followed him, limping, her one leg aching. But she dared not let go of his coat. Behind them, the market returned to life. People whispered and pointed, making cruel jokes. But the human didn't care. And as the sun set behind the ruined buildings, the alien girl wondered what kind of human would pay so much for someone everyone else called worthless, and what would he do with her now? The purchase everyone questioned even as the human led the alien girl away from the slave market. The whispers behind them grew louder. "Did you see that?" a merchant scoffed, shaking his head. "Humans must be desperate, or just plain stupid." The others laughed, their cruel words chasing the girl like old nightmares. She kept her eyes fixed on the ground, limping with every step. The human didn't say a word to the crowd. He held her arm gently, not tight, not rough, just enough to keep her from falling. When they reached a small, battered transport vehicle, he opened the door and helped her inside. The seat was soft, much softer than the cold ground she had slept on for weeks. As the engine hummed to life, the alien girl sat as still as a statue, hands in her lap, staring at the floor. She waited for the shouting, for the threats, for the sharp slap that always came before work or pain. But the human only glanced at her, then back at the road. She watched him from the corner of her eye. He had dark hair and a short beard, with eyes as steady as stone. His hands, resting on the controls, looked strong but not dangerous. Who was he? Why would he buy someone broken, someone no one else wanted? They drove through empty streets. Ruined buildings leaned over narrow roads, their shadows long in the fading sunlight. The human's vehicle was the only one moving. Everyone else in this part of the city locked their doors early, hiding from trouble that crept through the night. Finally, the human spoke. "You must be hungry," he said, his voice calm and gentle. The girl nodded, but didn't answer. She remembered the last time she'd been fed by a new owner. The food was old and tasted of rust, thrown at her like scraps to a dog. He noticed her fear. "I'm not going to hurt you," he added quietly. The words hung in the air. She didn't believe him, couldn't, not yet. No one was kind without a reason. She pulled her knees up, hugging them close, careful not to let her stump show. The vehicle stopped outside a small house, half hidden behind tall weeds. It wasn't fancy, but it looked clean and warm. The human helped her out, careful with her missing leg. She stumbled and for a moment thought he might hit her. Instead, he caught her gently and smiled a soft, sad smile. Inside, the house was quiet. No harsh voices, no barking orders, only the sound of the human's footsteps. He led her to a chair at a wooden table and disappeared into the kitchen. She looked around, surprised. There were books on the shelves, old pictures on the walls, and a blanket folded neatly on a worn-out couch. He returned with a bowl of hot soup and a piece of bread, placing them in front of her. "Eat," he said, then sat across from her and watched. Waiting, she hesitated. Was it safe? Was there something hidden inside? But hunger won. She took a small sip, then another. The soup was warm, salty, and for the first time in a long time, tasted good. The human didn't rush her. He just waited, silent. After a while, he asked, "Do you want to rest?" She nodded, unsure. Every other place, she'd been forced to work the moment she arrived, cleaning, scrubbing, or worse. But the human only pointed to a small room down the hall. "There's a bed in there," he said. "You can sleep as long as you like." The girl couldn't hide her surprise. "No work," she whispered. He shook his head. "Not tonight. You need to heal." She stared at him. She didn't understand. Was this a trick? Was he testing her? Her mind raced with old lessons. Trust no one. Expect nothing. Be ready to run. He must have seen the doubt in her eyes, because he looked away, almost embarrassed. "You're safe here," he said, his voice a little softer. "No one will hurt you." Still, she hesitated. She shuffled slowly to the small room and looked inside. There was a simple bed, a faded blanket, and a small window showing the moon. She turned, afraid to let her guard down, but the human just stood at the door, hands by his side. "What do you want from me?" she asked, voice trembling. He shook his head. "Nothing," he said, almost in a whisper. "Just rest." The girl lay on the bed, stiff and tense, expecting someone to burst in and shout at her. But the house stayed quiet. The human didn't lock the door, didn't demand anything. She listened to the sounds of the house's quiet movements, the soft clink of dishes in the kitchen, and nothing else. For the first time, sleep came easily. She dreamed of places where no one laughed at her, where her missing leg didn't matter, where a human's kindness might be real. But when morning came, she still wondered, was this all just a dream? Or was her life about to change forever? Broken but not worthless, the morning sun crept through the small window, painting lines of light across the blanket. The alien girl blinked, unsure for a moment if she was still dreaming. The bed was soft. The room was warm. There were no shouting voices, no angry footsteps, no hands pulling her out of sleep. She sat up slowly, careful of her missing leg. Every time she moved, pain flickered through the bandaged stump, a reminder of the world's cruelty. But today, the pain felt distant. There was something different here, something almost like hope. Outside the room, she heard the human moving around, his steps gentle on the old wooden floor. She pressed her hand against the wall, breathing quietly. Maybe if she stayed very still, he'd forget about her. Maybe she could disappear. But the human knocked softly. "Are you awake?" he called. She froze. For a moment, fear tightened her chest. She waited for the usual words, demands, the start of work. Instead, his voice stayed kind. "There's food if you want it," he said. She shuffled out, keeping her head down. The house looked brighter in daylight. Sunlight danced. Over the bookshelves and the photos on the walls, pictures of the human with other humans, smiling faces she didn't know. There was no sign of anger here, no smell of fear. He was in the kitchen, making breakfast. He looked up, smiled, and pulled out a chair for her. "Sit," he said, not as a command, but like an invitation. She sat, hands twisting in her lap. He placed a plate of bread and fruit in front of her. "Eat as much as you want," he said. The alien girl chewed slowly, eyes on the table. Every bite tasted strange, not like scraps, but like real food. Her stomach tightened, not with hunger, but with worry. Was this the moment he would ask her to clean or fix or fetch? Was this meal just a reward for coming work? He watched her for a while. Then he said, "I'm Tom." He waited, but she didn't answer. "I thought you might want to know," he added. She glanced at him, surprised by the gentle tone. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Names stuck in her throat like a stone. Names were dangerous in the markets. Names were things that could be taken away. Tom didn't push. He just smiled and began to talk about ordinary things, the weather. His job fixing old machines, the way the city looked beautiful in the spring. His voice was calm, like water running over stones. The girl listened, unsure what to make of. After breakfast, Tom showed her around the house. "This is your room now," he said. "And you can use anything, yearbooks, blankets, whatever you need." The girl stared at the books, her eyes wide. She could read a little from before. The market, before the pain. But she had not touched a book in so long. He knelt beside her. "If you want, I can teach you," he said. She looked away, fear mixing with longing. "Why are you being nice to me?" She whispered. Tom was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said because everyone deserves kindness, even if the world forgets it sometimes. She didn't know what to say. The words didn't make sense. In her old life, kindness was a trick, a trap. She pressed her lips together and limped to the window. Outside, children played in the street. None of them looked like her, but for a moment she wished she could join them. Tom set to work in the corner, fixing a broken lamp. The girl watched him from behind the door. Ugh. He was patient, never getting angry, even when things didn't work. When the lamp finally flickered to life, he grinned and held it out for her to see. "Would you like to try?" he asked. She shook her head, fear tightening her chest. "I'll break it," she whispered. Tom laughed softly. "Everything can break." That's how we learn to fix things. His words stayed with her all day. She moved slowly around the house, careful not to touch anything. Every time she thought Tom wasn't looking, she would reach out, brushing her fingers against a book or a soft blanket. Each time, nothing bad happened. She began to relax, just a little dot. As night came, Tom brought her another meal and sat with her in silence. The quiet was strange but peaceful. She watched him, waiting for the mask to fall, for the real danger to show, but it never came. Before bed, she finally spoke. "My name is Lyra," she whispered, the sound so soft she barely heard it herself. Tom smiled. "Lyra," he said. "That's a beautiful name." Lyra closed her eyes and let herself believe, for just a moment, that maybe this human saw her as more than broken. Maybe, in his home, she could be something else. But deep inside, she still wondered, could kindness really last? Or was this just another dream waiting to end? Learning to trust Lyra had never really slept well before, not since the night that raiders took her from her family and left her alone in the world. Even here, in Tom's quiet house, sleep was shallow and filled with half-remembered shadows. Each morning, she woke up stiff and uncertain, waiting for the moment when kindness would turn to cruelty. It always had, before, one morning, after. A night filled with uneasy dreams, Lyra heard Tom's soft footsteps moving about the house. She heard him humming, then the clatter of dishes. He never shouted. He never slammed doors. Even his movements were gentle, like he was afraid to disturb her. But fear, old and sharp, still twisted inside her. She didn't want to trust this new life, didn't dare let herself believe it could be real. So, when Tom left the front door unlocked as he worked in the garden, a wild idea crept into Lyra's mind. Maybe she could run. Maybe she could disappear before he changed, before he became like all the others. Her heart thumped in her chest. She clutched her blanket tight, took a shaky breath, and slid off the bed. Her new leg, still awkward and strange, sat beside her. She strapped it on with trembling hands. The prosthetic was a miracle, but it was heavy. And she was still learning to walk without falling. Still, fear made her brave. Lyra hobbled to the hallway and peeked around the corner. Tom was outside, his back to the house, humming as he pulled weeds. She could see the street beyond the small yard, and beyond that, the wide, open world. Lyra took a deep breath, limped forward, and pushed the front door open. She moved as quickly as she could, her heart pounding, her breath sharp in her throat. But the ground outside was rough, and the new leg caught on a stone. In an instant, she tumbled forward, landing hard. Pain shot through her stump, and her hands scraped on the ground. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the anger she knew was coming. But it didn't. Instead, Tom's shadow fell over her. He rushed over, kneeling beside her. He didn't yell. He didn't scold. His face was filled with worry, not rage. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. Lyra shook her head, blinking away tears she didn't want to show. Tom gently helped her sit up, checking her bandages and the straps of the prosthetic. "Don't run," he said quietly, his voice almost sad. "You'll only hurt yourself." Lyra tried to pull away, expecting punishment, but Tom just sat beside her, letting her breathe. "Why did you buy me?" she whispered, not daring to look at him. Tom sighed. He brushed a bit of dirt off her arm, slow and careful. "I saw you on that stage," he said. "I saw how they treated you. No one deserves that. You're not broken, Lyra. You're strong, stronger than they'll ever understand." Lyra looked at him, searching his face for a lie. All she saw was tired honesty and something else, a kind of sadness, deep and old. "I'm not strong," she whispered. "I'm nothing. I can't do anything. I can't even walk right." Tom shook his head gently. "You survived things most never could. That makes you stronger than any of them." For a long time, they just sat together in the garden, the sun warming their backs. Tom didn't ask her to go inside or work or apologize. He only sat with her like it was the most natural thing in the world. When Lyra finally stood up, Tom offered his hand but didn't force her to take it. She took it anyway, letting him help her inside. That afternoon, Tom brought out a small box filled with colorful blocks and wires. He sat on the floor and began building something, humming softly. Lyra watched, curious in spite of herself. "Want to help?" Tom asked, holding out a bright blue block. Lyra hesitated, but something in Tom's smile made her want to try. She reached out with shaking fingers and took the block. Together, they built a little tower, then a house, then something that looked almost like a ship. Every time Lyra made a mistake, Tom just laughed. "Try again," he'd say. "That's how you learn." As the sun set, Tom placed their creation on the shelf. "Not bad for a first try," he grinned. Lyra felt something strange, something light. Was it happiness? She wasn't sure, but it made her want to laugh too. That night, as she lay in bed, Lyra thought about running again, but she didn't want to anymore. She wanted to see what they would build tomorrow. She wanted to hear Tom's stories and see his smile. For the first time in a long time, Lyra fell asleep with hope instead of fear. But in the darkness, she wondered how long could this peace last. In a world that mocked and hated, was there really a place she could call home? The prosthetic gift, the first rays of sunlight snuck through the curtains, touching Lyra's sleeping face. She woke slowly, rolling to her side, and for a moment, she forgot her missing leg. She reached, expecting pain, but found nothing except the soft blanket Tom had given her. The prosthetic leg sat by her bed, waiting. Each day since her escape attempt, things had felt different. Lyra stopped expecting cruelty with every breath. Tom never shouted. He never hit her. If she made a mistake, he only smiled and encouraged her to try again. It was strange and unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. On this morning, Tom seemed excited. He was already up, moving quietly through the house, his hands full of strange packages. When Lyra came to the kitchen, he grinned at her. "Good morning. Sit down. I have something for you," he said. Lyra blinked. A gift. She could not remember ever receiving one. Even as a child, gifts were rare, and in the market, kindness was always a trick. She sat carefully, her heart thudding. Tom placed a small box in front of her. "Open it," he urged, eyes twinkling with anticipation. Lyra's hands shook as she unwrapped the box. Inside, she found a sleek, metallic object, new prosthetic leg, shining and delicate, with smooth joints and tiny lights. It looked nothing like the heavy, ugly limb she wore now. It looked like something from another world. Her breath caught. "For me?" she whispered. Tom nodded. "I made it for you. I saved up for the parts and stayed up late working. This one is lighter and fits better. You deserve something special, Lyra." Lyra touched the new leg with trembling fingers. It was so beautiful she almost didn't dare believe it was real. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. She was used to being laughed at for her tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. Tom knelt beside her, helping her remove the old prosthetic. He worked slowly, explaining how the new leg worked, how to strap it on, how to adjust the fit, how to make the lights glow with every step. Lyra listened closely, not wanting to miss a single detail. The first time she stood, she wobbled. The leg was so light it almost felt like walking on air. Tom caught her before she could fall. "Take it slow," he said gently. "You'll get the hang of it." She tried again. Step, step. For the first time, the movement felt easy. She could walk without dragging her foot, without pain grinding through her body. She could almost forget she was different. Tom clapped, proud and happy. "See, you're already getting better." For the next hour, Lyra practiced walking around the house. She even tried running a few steps, laughing as she nearly tripped. Tom joined in her laughter, not mocking, just sharing the moment. Lyra's face glowed with excitement and pride. Later, Tom suggested, "Let's take a walk outside. The fresh air will do you good." Lyra hesitated, her old fear returning. "People will see me," she said quietly. "They'll laugh." Tom's face grew serious. "Let them laugh. Their words can't hurt you unless you let them. Besides, you're not alone anymore." The words warmed her. She nodded, and together they stepped out into the world. Outside, the sun was warm, and birds sang in the trees. Some neighbors peeked from behind curtains as Lyra walked slowly down the street, her new leg gleaming in the light. A few children stared. A few adults whispered behind their hands. But Lyra kept her head high. With every step, she felt braver. An old woman from across the street called out, "Good morning, Tom. Who's your friend?" Tom smiled. "This is Lyra. She's living with me now." The woman waved at Lyra, her eyes kind. "Well, welcome, dear. That's a fine leg you've got. My son lost his arm in the war. Maybe you two can talk sometime." Lyra blushed, surprised by the friendliness. She managed a small wave in return. After the walk, Tom and Lyra sat on the porch, watching the sky turn gold and pink. Lyra touched her new leg, still amazed. "Why do you help me?" she asked softly. Tom looked out at the horizon, his face thoughtful. "Because everyone deserves a chance. Because kindness is how we change the world, one person at a time." Lyra didn't answer, but inside her, something began to heal. For the first time, she wondered if maybe she could have a future, a real one, filled with hope. But as they sat there, shadows grew long across the ground. Somewhere in those shadows, old dangers still waited. And not everyone in town was as kind as Tom or the old woman. Lyra's happiness, as sweet as it felt, was still fragile. She knew the world could change in a single heartbeat. Yet tonight, she'll let herself dream. When cruelty returns, days passed in peace, and the world outside. Tom's little house seemed softer, almost safe. Lyra learned to walk with confidence. She helped Tom with simple tasks and even tried her hand at fixing small machines. For the first time, laughter visited her lips, quiet, uncertain, but real. But kindness never lasted long in Lyra's world. One afternoon, as Tom and Lyra returned from the village market, trouble waited by their gate. 3 men stood there, arms crossed, eyes cold. They were traders from the old market, the same market where Lyra had been mocked and left unsold. The same men who had called her worthless. Tom's steps slowed, but he didn't show fear. Lyra's heart thudded as memories of rough hands and cruel words clawed at her mind. She moved closer to Tom, holding the bag of food tighter. "Well, well," sneered the tallest man, his voice oily. "Look who's walking like she owns the place. Pretty fancy leg for a street rat, huh?" The second trader, with sharp eyes and a twisted smile, nodded. "We saw you at the market, Tom, buying damaged goods. Didn't think you'd fix her up so nicely?" Tom placed a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder. "What do you want?" The third trader, silent until now, stepped forward. Word spreads fast. "People are talking about the miracle girl, the one with the glowing leg. The boss thinks she's valuable now, worth a lot more than before." Lyra's stomach twisted. She tried to hide behind Tom, but the men only laughed. "Scared? Little one, don't worry. We'll take care of you just like before." Tom's voice was steady, but there was iron beneath it. "She's not for sale. She never was." The men looked at each other, then back at Tom. The tallest one leaned close. "Don't be stupid, human. We can make life hard for you, for both of you. Sell her back to us, and no one gets hurt." Tom shook his head. "She stays with me. Have no right to take her." For a tense moment, no one moved. Lyra's hands shook. She felt small, broken, and powerless all over again. Her new leg suddenly seemed heavy. What if they took her? Would she lose everything she'd found? The second trader spat on the ground. "You think you're a hero, Tom? She's still an alien. Still nothing. You can't change that." Tom's face darkened. "Get off my property," he said, his voice low. "Don't come back." The tallest man grinned, showing yellow teeth. "We'll be back, and next time you better be ready to pay." With a final glare, the men turned and walked away, leaving the gate swinging in the wind. Tom waited until they were gone, then let out a long breath. Lyra's legs buckled. She sat down hard on the porch steps, staring at her hands. Old fear gnawed at her heart. "They'll take me," she whispered, her voice thin. "They always take me." Tom knelt beside her. He took her shaking hands in his and squeezed gently. "Not this time," he promised. "I won't let anyone hurt you, not ever again." Lyra searched his face. There was no fear in his eyes, only anger, and something stronger. She wanted to believe him, but the world had taught her to expect the worst. That night, Tom locked every door and window. He moved quietly through the house, checking each room twice. Lyra tried to sleep, but every sound made her jump. Shadows in the hallway became monsters. Every whisper of wind a threat. Just before midnight, she slipped out of bed and found Tom sitting at the kitchen table, a mug of cold tea in his hands. He looked up, weary but calm. "Can't sleep?" She shook her head. Tom smiled gently and pushed out a chair. "Sit with me, then. Sometimes it helps to talk." Lyra sat, drawing her knees to her chest. "Why do they hate me so much?" she asked softly. Tom was quiet for a moment. A tipo. "Fear what's different. Sometimes they use that fear to hurt others. But fear doesn't decide who you rude." Lyra nodded, the words heavy but comforting. "What if they come back?" Tom's jaw tightened. "Then we'll face them. Together." For the first time since the traders had returned, Lyra felt something spark inside her, a strange new courage. Maybe, with Tom by her side, she could be brave. Maybe she could fight for her place in this world. They sat together until the sky lightened, listening to the silent promise of a new day. But in her heart, Lyra knew the fight wasn't over. The traders would return. The world would test her again. Yet for the first time, she wasn't running. She was ready to stand. Worth beyond price, the traders returned just as the morning mist began to clear. 3 figures, wrapped in old coats and ugly confidence, marched up Tom's path. This time, they didn't bother with threats or whispers. They kicked open the gate and stomped straight to the porch, boots loud on the wooden steps. Lyra watched from the window, her heart beating fast but steady. She was afraid, but not like before. Today, she was ready. Tom stood at the door, his frame solid and calm. You need to leave, he said, voice even. The tallest trader grinned. Out of our way, human, we're taking her back. The boss put a price on that alien. It's more than you've got in your whole life. Tom shook his head. She's not for sale. Not now, not ever. Neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, drawn by the noise. Whispers floated on the cool morning air. For the first time, people saw what was really happening, not just a human and a broken alien girl, but a choice about who they wanted to be. The second trader stepped forward, showing a nasty-looking stun stick. Move, or you'll regret it. Tom didn't move. He planted his feet and looked them in the eyes. You regret enough already, I think. You sold your hearts a long time ago. The traders laughed, but there was something uneasy in the sound. Lyra, standing behind Tom, felt her new leg trembling. She took a breath and stepped out onto the porch. Her silver eyes were clear and bright in the sun. If you take me, you get nothing, she said, her voice steady. I won't be a slave again. I won't help you, and I won't let you hurt anyone else. The tallest trader spat at the ground. Stupid alien, no one cares what you want. But from the edge of the yard, an old woman spoke up. I care. She stepped forward, cane in hand. Her eyes hard as stone. Others appeared behind her neighbors, shopkeepers, children Lyra had seen from her window. They stood together, quiet but firm, blocking the path to Tom's house. She's part of our town now, the old woman said. You'll have to go through us. The traders looked around, unsure. The power they always felt in their numbers was gone. They were just three men against a crowd that had found its courage. Tom smiled, proud. He reached for Lyra's hand and squeezed it gently. See, you're not alone anymore. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the second trader muttered, This isn't worth it. He shoved his stun stick into his pocket and backed away. The tallest hesitated, glaring at Tom and Lyra, then turned and followed. The last trader, the one who had always been the cruelest, looked at Lyra one last time. For a second, something like regret flashed in his eyes. Then he spat, turned, and left. As the traders disappeared down the street, the crowd began to cheer soft at first, then louder. Lyra stood tall, her new leg shining, her chin lifted high. The fear that had haunted her for so long felt small now, like a shadow in bright sunlight. Tom turned to the crowd. Thank you, he said simply, for standing with us. The old woman smiled. That's what neighbors do. She's one of us now. Lyra felt a warmth inside her she hadn't known since she was a child, before the market, before the pain. For the first time, she believed she belonged. As the crowd drifted away, Lyra looked at Tom, her eyes shining with hope. Am I really worth all this? She asked softly. Tom nodded. You're worth more than any price. And not just to me, to everyone who chooses kindness over cruelty. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us strong. Lyra smiled, real bright. Smile that reached her eyes. She glanced down at her new leg, at the porch, at the house she now called home. The world was still dangerous, still filled with people who would try to tear her down. But now, she had something they could never steal. She had a family. She had her name. She had hope. That night, as the stars glittered above, Lyra sat with Tom on the porch, listening to the quiet peace of their little home. She knew the world might never be perfect, but here, with people who saw her as more than broken, she had found something worth living for. And as she watched the first light of morning rise, she understood what Tom had meant all along. Real worth was never measured by price, but by the courage to believe you matter when the world tells you otherwise. Lyra was home, and no one could take that from her again.